Hi guys, it's Chantel with Wildberry Quilting, and today we are doing part 5 of the Halloween Memories quilt along. And if you would like to join in with us, remember that all of the supplies and the book and everything that you need is over at Fat Quarter Shop. I will link them down below. They were gracious enough to send me over the supplies that I need so that I can help walk you through this quilt along and sew it with you. Now we're going to jump right in with quilting and another spooky story. So let's get started. All right, so now we have the rest of our G pieces and we're going to be attaching them to the sides of these pieces. All right, guys. So instead of our usual story this week, I decided it would be fun to kind of take a deep dive into one of my favorite cryptid creatures. So, this week we are going to be talking about Mokele mbembe. Now, if you are not already familiar with this creature, which I assume probably many of you are not, it is absolutely fascinating. It's a creature that is said to live in the Congo of the Republic and the Cameroon region. And it's described as being a dinosaur like creature. Very, very intriguing. And this is, of course, described by people, by the locals of the area, many of whom, at the time of describing it, never actually knew what a dinosaur was. I find this creature absolutely fascinating. It is a dinosaur-like creature, and if you're not familiar with the legends, then buckle up because you're in for an incredible ride. I just can't get enough of this one, and there's a lot out there. I'm only going to go over a small portion, and if you guys would like to hear more afterwards, you let me know. The native people of the Congo and the Cameroon regions mostly consider this to be a normal yet rare creature that is not to be reckoned with. It is considered extremely dangerous. They describe it as a very large, semi-aquatic animal with a large, bulky body, a long neck and long tail, and a small head. Very much like our typical depictions of a sauropod dinosaur. One of the first recorded reports that may have been about this creature was reported by a French explorer in 1776. Fourier met with a group of missionaries who had not seen the animal but had come across a completely unexplainable set of tracks. They were 3 feet in circumference. They were noted to be clawed, and the distance between each print was 7 to 8 feet. Now, the way that the prints were laid out, they were able to determine that those 7 to 8 feet between each print was in walking stride and not at a running pace. This was an enormous creature. There were some who tried to dismiss it as possibly being an extremely large lion. But if the prints were 3 feet in circumference, that means that they were nearly 30 inches across. Now, the size of your average lion's footprint across is between 4 to 5 inches. Now just take a moment to let that set in. The footprint for an average lion, the diameter is 4 to 5 inches across. And whatever this was, it was nearly 30 inches across. That is enormous. If that were a lion, we would still be talking about a creature that was outside the accepted norms of modern science. The next known report came from Ludwig Freier von Stein zu Lusnite. And I am so sorry because I probably mangled that. But the report was in 1914. He was in an expedition to the Northern Republic of the Congo, which was not called the Congo at the time. It was considered a territory of another country. He never published his expedition notes. However, they were later used in 2 books by different authors, one of which is called The Dodo, the Lungfish, and the Unicorn, written in 1948. Now, Stein's description, we're just going to call him Stein because I can't pronounce all of that again. Stein's description of Mokele mbembe came from several different guides, independent from one another. Although he was unsure if the creature was real or a legend, he did believe it had something tangible at its core. The natives told him of the locations of several of the elusive creatures. Sadly, his expedition was cut short and he was unable to venture further. Their description was a brownish gray colored creature with smooth skin and roughly the size of an elephant. Its neck is said to be long and flexible, and it has one very long tooth. Some say it's a horn, and I think that makes sense that it would be a horn because when I imagine a creature, I can't imagine a creature with just one single tooth, but a horn does make sense. And I can definitely see how the natives would have maybe referred to it as such, or possibly it would have been translated as that because they were trying to describe it to a foreigner. Some of them also spoke of a long, muscular tail like that of a crocodile. It was known to attack any vessels that were traveling in the water. In fact, the locals were, in some areas, were quite frightened to bring their canoes and their boats out into the open areas of the lakes and rivers because it was said to not only capsize and break them, but finish off the inhabitants. Now, that being said, it was always made quite clear that it never ate the remains. So, this kind of excludes the idea of it being a crocodile. Despite the fact, however, that there were some native people who did refer to it as being a type of crocodile, they did all agree on the fact that it never ate the remains. And I think it could be hypothesized that it was compared to a crocodile because it was some sort of reptilian. Now, some other interesting key facts that were agreed on by all of the native people was that this creature lived in the caves that were washed out by the river into the clay along the sides. And it would not come out during the daytime. It would wait until night and then it would come up onto land and it would eat this certain type of plant. Many of the locals describe the creature as being around the size of an elephant, but no smaller than a hippo. Now, the interesting thing about that is that there are some other places that are not too far from the region where they describe a similar creature, but they describe it as being much larger to the point that the head towers over the tops of the trees and being, in some reports, roughly 60 feet from head to tail. This to me sounds like a similar but different creature. And the reports of it being larger also describe it having a sort of comb type feature on its head, some sort of bridge. And I really think that if this was the same thing, that we would have heard reports of that from the other natives. That seems like it's a key identifying feature. Unless perhaps if that is what they are referring to as the comb or as the tooth or the horn, possibly that is just how they are interpreting whatever they are seeing. Some of them are thinking that it's a comb or a ridge, and others are seeing it as a horn or a tooth. But the size variation does make me think that this is likely something different. Very similar and possibly related, but different. There are so many different reports, all the way from when this was first seen in the 1700s all the way to today. Now, it does seem that this creature is very rare, and even the locals say that, but it is enough that they are frightened of it, and they do take precautions against it. There have been numerous people who have gone out and attempted to find it, and they have found tracks and trails and leading up to the types of plants that they are said to eat. They also have found caves that the locals believe they are staying in. Now, you may notice that at this point we have mostly secondhand accounts, and there's not really been much stated about firsthand sightings. However, this is soon to change in the 1980s. There were multiple expeditions out to these areas. Scientists were ready to find out what was going on. However, these areas are deep in the Congo. And one of the lakes that these sightings are said to be at, Lake Tele, is extremely difficult to get to. We are talking very rugged terrain out in thick jungle and having to traverse very dangerous areas. And out of these multiple expeditions, many of them never even made it to Lake Tele. In fact, many of them, which had originally planned to, ended up having to cancel and go back partway through for various reasons. It was like every time they got a step forward and they were ready to go find this creature, something just prevented them and another roadblock was placed in their way. However, a few of the expeditions did manage to make their way through. The first expedition to finally make it through was in 1983. And the man who accomplished this was biologist Marceline Agnagonon. I apologize. I have probably messed up his name. But he came back with stories of first hand sightings of Mokele mbembe. And he also came back with pictures and audio recordings. Sadly, he was criticized that his recordings and pictures were not to the quality that was desired. However, this jump started the next expedition. Now, while they did make it to Lake Tele again, sadly, there were no first-hand sightings on this particular expedition. However, there was physical evidence with trails being found and other interviews with first-hand witnesses. Many more expeditions were made, and I have not read through all of them. This is just a small taste. I do plan to read through the rest of them, and if you guys are interested in hearing more about Mokele mbembe or a different cryptid creature, feel free to let me know in the comments down below or send me an email. Or if you have a creepy story that you would like me to tell, feel free to send that over to me as well. I would love to share your stories on here. There is a whole lot more about the story of Mokele mbembe and what has been going on with different expeditions and trips out there, and people in the area still believe that it is out there and are still spotting it even today. I absolutely adore the Mokele mbembe legends and the stories, and I really do believe that there is something out there. And as always, I believe the native people and what they say they are seeing takes precedence in my mind over what somebody who is a foreigner coming in there and hypothesizing has to say about it. It is very, very common for local people to see things, and for the small amount of time that somebody who is not local to the area comes in there, they just don't see it. This is especially true with a creature that is fairly elusive and not seen frequently. It has taken scientists many years to be able to track down different animals that we know and we have documentation for. And there are many documented creatures that we know very little about because they are just simply so elusive, and people have gone out trying to study them and come up empty-handed. So, of course, that really does not, in my mind, lessen the credibility in any way. All right, guys, that's it for week 5. I hope that you're having a lot of fun with doing this quilt along. I know I sure am. I hope you enjoyed our spooky story today. Remember, if you would like to join in with the sew along, all of the stuff that you need is over at Back Quarter Shop. And if you'd like to hear me tell your spooky story, then you can always send it to my email address, which is linked in the description box down below. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and I will see you guys again next time. Bye.